So for Gamescom, Turn 10 just dropped a couple of articles about Forza Motorsport, and this is not usually something I'd say is worth a whole video, but there are actually some massive pieces of info here that I think are important for the average player to know. And not everybody checks Twitter or wherever else the discussion is happening, so I figured I'd make a quick summary of both articles for everyone to get caught up on the latest motorsport news. To start, these are very PC-focused articles. Don't expect too much console news here. There is some we'll get to later though. For now, PC specs have dropped. Here is the infographic with minimum, recommended, and ideal settings, and I think there is nothing too surprising here. I'm actually pretty happy with how reasonable the minimum specs are. I think those are totally fair for a game that's only releasing on current-gen consoles. The big question is just what resolution and frame rate are these specs targeting? I would strongly assume that everything here is shooting for 60 FPS, with minimum probably at 16:9 1080, and ideal settings more towards the 4K or ultra-wide 1440 spec. Now we do also know a bit more about resolutions and graphic settings for PC. In the article, they mention both that Forza Motorsport supports resolutions for up to 4K and beyond, and that races in the PC version of Motorsport look great on ultra-wide monitors thanks to support for non-standard resolutions available in on-track gameplay. Weird wording, maybe the menus are locked to 16:9 or something, but great news anyway. Unfortunately though, nothing is mentioned about triple screens, meaning that triple screen users might have to resort to things like NVIDIA Surround in order to achieve the window size they want. You do have to do this with triples in Forza Horizon, so maybe not a big surprise there, but I would like to see more support for triples in a more sim-focused game. We'll see though if they end up saying more about that closer to release. Now on this topic, they did also talk a bit about FOV and camera settings. PC and console players will have access to the standard set of camera options we've had in Forza before. Bumper, hood, cockpit, driver, and chase near and far cams are available, and FOVs for these cameras are adjustable between 25 and 65 degrees, which is certainly a step up from Motorsport 7, but pretty similar to what we already get in Horizon, which might not quite be enough for anybody on a 32:9 setup, or again, triples. For example, here's what Horizon looks like in the cockpit cam at the maximum 55 degrees. An extra 10 degrees will help, but still might not be enough to see all of the driver and rearview mirrors in certain cars. There's also nothing here about pitch adjustment or driver position, which are settings I love in games like AC, but these settings are still a big step up from what GT7 offers, and that's still serviceable, so these are definitely expected and decent options for a console-focused sim. Now let's talk about something very interesting: frame rates in multiplayer. For PC players, we will have the ability to unlock frame rate and adjust VSync and things in single-player modes, but in multiplayer racing, frame rate will be locked on PC to some multiple of your monitor's refresh rate in order to ensure fairness with consoles, and possibly to ensure accurate timekeeping. I know Horizon struggles with this a bit. Now, I'll admit, my knee-jerk reaction to this is certainly negative. I love options, I have a powerful PC with a 240Hz display, and I want to be able to fully utilize that. However, honestly, after giving it some thought, I think I really like this. The frame rate lock is really nice for limiting the hardware arms race. Now you can still go above 60 FPS in multiplayer. If you, for example, have a 144Hz monitor, then you could see 72 FPS in race, but it'll just be locked there. I think it's perfectly on brand for Motorsport, which is an entry-level, accessible sim, to make sure people are on a relatively even playing field during competitive racing. This applies to both frame rate and FOV options too. Although PC players, I'm sure, will see this as a negative, I really think across the board this is a good move, and shows that Turn 10 are really trying to create a fair and competitive atmosphere by making sure players don't have to worry about having the best hardware or being at a disadvantage advantage if they don't. I'm okay with leaving that to more serious sims like iRacing or ACC and keeping motorsport accessible to the masses. Alright, let's move on here and confirm a couple more PC options. We have further confirmation that HDR support, as well as DLSS 2 and FSR 2.2 will be in for launch. The game also supports direct storage and shader pre-caching and compilation to ensure fast loading and stutter-free gameplay. Now, we actually have DLSS 3 in Horizon, and I'm curious if they just couldn't get it in for launch on Motorsport, or if they're actually choosing to leave it out for other reasons. DLSS 3 does generate essentially fake frames in between real ones, so maybe that messes with the physics or engine timing or something else, and they figured it was just best to leave it out. And finally, we did see this one coming, but VR support has been further confirmed to not be in Motorsport. A bummer, but again, no surprise, and fits in with the whole hardware fairness across the board. Moving on though, this is cool. Finally, all versions of Forza Motorsport will have cross-save, as well as, of course, crossplay. Horizon 5 has crossplay across all versions of the game, but the Steam save and achievement system is completely separate from the Xbox version. Now, everything is synced up, which I'm quite happy about. It's a nice quality of life perk. We also got more pricing confirmation, and I'll throw that up on screen here. Nothing too surprising. It looks like Motorsport is moving to the new $70 standard for games though. Now before we wrap up with some new track news, we did finally get some confirmation about controller and peripheral options. Motorsport does support built-in remapping for gamepads, mouse and keyboard, or any other device that uses the direct input API. We will also get the same kind of data out that Horizon 5 gets, where you can display things like lap delta, tire heat, or revs on custom screens, or on your wheel if it supports that. And speaking of wheels, here is the list of supported hardware for consoles. Looks like pretty much the major range of Logitech, Fanatec, and Thrustmaster hardware, which is good. And then PC has quite a bit more options with support for Moza hardware and a much bigger range of Fanatec and Thrustmaster stuff. And that's pretty much it for all the PC tech details. As a final important note though, at Gamescom we finally got official confirmation that the Nürburgring GP circuit will be in for launch. However, the Nordschleife will be coming later, in spring of 2024. This is, to me, I think the biggest staple of any sim racing game. So admittedly, I'm pretty shocked they didn't push to get this one in for release. But at the least, they communicated that with us, and we will have it, within 6 months or so. I really think, combined with a lot of the other info we've gotten about things like spectator mode, drift and drag modes, and so on, Motorsport is going to need some time to cook before it really hits its stride. Hopefully, all these systems they're talking about are rock solid. The new physics and race regulations, and of course the super accurate scanning of the tracks. I really hope that shines on release and it justifies the smaller scope of the game, and then they just hit the ground running with post-launch content. If the racing is really good, 20 tracks on launch is certainly enough to tide me over for a while. But I really want to see strong post-launch schedules for tracks, cars, and features, because if Turn 10 wants to keep players around for the long haul, which they do, they've got to make sure the racing continues to feel fresh. So, folks, that is just about everything we learned today. I've linked both of the articles I referenced in the description, so feel free to look them over yourself if you would like. I didn't quite mention everything, just everything I felt was worth mentioning. And with that, everyone, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.